Welcome to this episode of the Insurance Brokers Podcast. Today's episode is a slightly different episode in that we are talking to cybersecurity expert Brad Fraser. Brad is the CEO of Infoprotect, and he's talking to us about cyber risks and how you can explain them to your clients. Good morning, Brad. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. Today we're talking about cyber insurance, cyber security, everything cyber. And I'd love for you to give us an overview of who you are and what part you play in the world of cyber.
Great. Good morning, Sarah. Thanks for the invite. I look after a company called Infoprotect. We're situated in the UK and in South Africa. We've had about 9 years experience in the IT industry, looking after large corporates and obviously SMEs and the like. Our main focus is around cybersecurity, as the name obviously grabs you when we say it. And we look at our customers and their customers alike in what they need to have in terms of cybersecurity protection. And it's a very broad subject. So typically we like to simplify it quite a lot and make it understandable for customers and, as I said, their customers alike.
I think the simplification is really useful, because one of the things that I come across a lot in my work is when I'm talking to, so we do a lot of renewal surgeries and things like that with insurance brokers and with their sales team. And obviously cyber insurance is a buzzword, it's a big add-on, and it's something everybody's looking to do. But there's often a lack of confidence in the sales process. And what I suppose I mean by that is understanding what a cyber risk is, how it might apply to that particular company, and being able to give stories and examples that really show that you understand where that business's risk is and how you can minimize that risk through insurance. So I wonder if we can really talk about that. What's your view on that? What sort of stories have you seen in your experience, and how do you simplify what a cyber risk is?
Yeah, sure. As I said, it's a broad subject, but when you look at it from an insurance perspective, and typically we also a customer of an insurance underwriter. So we've gone through the same scenario when insurers have come to us and said, right, you need to have a look at this, you need to have a look at that to make sure you're insurable. And a lot of it is around what is your security posture? In other words, what is your understanding and your awareness more than anything else of what your current security stature, as I said, or posture is. Now, the easiest way to do that is to start with an assessment. And that assessment, once again, it's a fairly simple process. And what we always like to do is look at it from a business aspect and not from an IT aspect, because, and even though IT is involved, what you'll typically have is business people need the insurance done. They turn to IT and go, tell us what we've got. And they get a whole lot of answers and they give it to the insurer and say, right, that's what we have. Whereas business itself and management needs to take some responsibility for the cybersecurity awareness and what's actually sitting within their business. And as I said, a lot of it's very simple. It starts with some training, and that training very much starts at your endpoint of who's the most involved in being attacked, if I can call it from a cybersecurity point of view. And a lot of that is your employees. So have you done the necessary training for your employees to be aware of what they can be faced with? And it can be a simple thing like a phishing mail, clicking on a link that they shouldn't be, and that type of thing. And it's putting those policies and procedures in place to make sure that the insurer will look at your company favorably and go, right, we'll cover you. And that's the starting point. Awareness training for your staff is a very good starting point.
And that's got to apply to your very, your VSME all the way up to the top. In fact, we at Boston Tullis, we had an email come through from my co-director's email to our virtual assistant but it was from his personal email. And she was really, and it looked absolutely kosher, and it wasn't. It was asking to transfer money from A to B. And luckily, she's very switched on, had the relevant training, and straight away emailed us and say, this isn't right, is it? I think you need to check. And we are, you know, we're only 5 or 6 strong in terms of our core business model. So right from the very, very, very small businesses all the way through, that training is absolutely essential.
Absolutely. And there's technology that can protect you as well. You know, so there's systems out there. There's a policy called DMARC, and the DMARC it's a global standard, though it's not enforced completely. So a lot of companies aren't aware of it and they don't follow it. But the DMARC standard allows you to be protected against phishing mails, and that phishing mail is exactly what your virtual assistant got. Someone, your MD's email box domain was compromised, and suddenly you get a mail saying transfer some money, and it looks totally legitimate. And a lot of customers that we've had in the past have been taken for millions and millions of pounds, purely because someone wasn't aware. They clicked on that mail and off they went. The next step is, though, if they had that protection in place and they had followed that DMARC policy, there's a whole lot of other protections that would happen. So in other words, that mail would not even have come through. Because if you think about it, if you were, and we had a company that looked after trust funds. So can you imagine the brand reputation when money was transferred from one trust fund to another incorrectly because of a phishing mail? So a lot of it now comes, what is your remediation and what should you be looking at to protect your brand and to protect your company as such? Because once again, imagine if Boston Telus had sent a mail to, for example, us as a business and saying, please do the following. And we go, well, okay, we know who Boston Telus is, and we'd click on it and off we'd go. And then only to find out that it was a fraudulent mail and the request was fraudulent would create a whole lot of brand reputational problems. And that's the cost that a lot of people aren't aware of. Because they're saying, well, first of all, it's not going to happen to me. Well, I can tell you, 31% of companies in the UK are being attacked on a weekly basis. And that's a firm statistic. And it's going to happen at some case. Statistics say that you are going to be the recipient of a cyber attack at some stage.
Has that increased through home working in the last 12 months?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. Because people become complacent. So even though they go, well, I would have normally have done this in work situation. Now I'm sitting at home, I'm very comfortable. I'm sitting in my dining room or wherever my home office is and it's set up. And I'm going through my mails and, oh, there's something from Sarah, there's something from Brad. And you click because you're in that comfortable scenario. So it definitely has gone up a lot more. And it's also because the network is not as secure as it would normally be.
Now that's something. I mean, I'm married to a network architect, right? But can I understand that whole process? Not a chance. I really struggle with technology stuff in that respect. So one of the things that I've spoken to a few people about who are similar to me is, what can you be doing if you are at home? So say you work for a big corporate and you've all gone home and you've got your work laptops. What else do you need to be looking for? Not just the emails, but what other major risks are there? Can somebody come into your home internet? And so actually being able to describe this as an insurance broker, being able to talk to your client who is a large corporate to say, your staff won't know whether their home network is secure or whether that's doesn't matter because of the intranet that they're working on. You know, can you explain that to us?
So and once again, to simplify the situation, and yes, it's not really your place to understand that, but you need to be given the tools to counteract any attacks that you may get. One of the first things are passwords. And I mean, you see the various jokes going around, you know, what's your password? And it's like password 1, 2, 3, and the like. And that's very, very real. And network administrators, and I wouldn't say your husband's one of them, but there are many network administrators out there that when they start off, they'll give a username as admin and the password admin. And that remains for the life of a particular server, because no one's thought of going back as the business has evolved and got bigger and bigger and bigger. No one's thought of going back and maybe do something and change that. So that's one instance of that sort of thing happening. And we had a customer like that, exactly the same scenario, very loose password control, and an employee that had a virtual laptop had managed, not by any negligent way, but had managed to just access that network. And it was just sitting in the background on their computer. And they went to a client, and their clients invested some large sums of money with them. And unbeknown to him, his PC got attacked, and through a ransomware attack. And from his PC, they got into the actual network and brought the entire network of this financial services company down. Fortunately, we did all their backups and virtual backups for them and off-site backups for them, and were able to restore it very quickly, and also mitigated the risk of any ransomware sitting there. But a very simple way around it for people sitting remotely is two-factor authentication when it comes to passwords. So you can use your normal password, and that's great. But then the next step is you'll get a request to a cell phone or an email or some other form of communication asking you to insert a one-time PIN. And that then mitigates or goes around the situation where even if you are attacked and people find out your password, they're not going to get past that two-factor authentication step. And we just had a case recently in one of my other businesses where we had to sign up for cyber insurance because we deal with large corporates and we've got all their information. And putting in two-factor authentication for all our remote staff was one of the first things that we put on our form to, all right, we covered in doing this type of thing. So it's a very important factor to look at. Yeah. So for example, if you use Gmail and you use cloud, the Google Cloud to store all your information, your very first login onto your system needs to be handled with a two-factor authentication. So you can only get in to your cloud situation by using two-factor authentication.
Okay, so I know a lot of SMEs, VSMEs use things like OneDrive or G Drive. So when you're sharing a folder within G Drive with, for example, a client, is that something that requires, can you share it with them and give them a password and tell them that they need a password to get in?
They will use two-factor authentication on that as well.
All right, so we should be talking to your client about when discussing cyber. First is the type of risks that are there, how you can mitigate are with training, with password protect, two-factor authentication, particularly in homeworking. What other sort of major things can you think of that might be of use when you are talking about cyber risk to your client, sort of things to talk about?
I think the key thing, I know the key thing is to have a proper assessment done of your environment. Now that can be done by your internal IT staff, but you'll typically find IT staff and in an SME, and even going up to a large SME, if I can call it that, your IT staff are typically generalists. So they'll know all about networking, they'll know all about your endpoints and actually doing your desktop and all the likes of that, and possibly even backing up your data and what to do with cloud and so on. But there's going to be very few general IT people that are cyber aware to the finite detail that they need to be. And sometimes it's just one little thing that may trip you up. So we always recommend, and I say if you're a large company and you've got all your security layers and all that type of thing, you still need some other tools. You still need some education. And that education now is not about your general staff or your general employees. but it's your IT staff then that need to work with a specialist and someone that can actually assess independently what they are doing. And that assessment can be done, handed to the IT staff, and then saying, here's your remediation process that you need to go through, and then do the various reports on it. But it's the key thing with that, Sarah, it's not a one-time exercise. A lot of people think, well, I'm going to do it because I need to do it for insurance. And I've done my assessment. I filled in all the forms. I've got passwords worked out. I've got my information in the cloud, so I should be secure, right? Well, maybe for today or tomorrow, but you need to have a look again and again and again and reassess your situation. A lot of our customers, and most of our customers, in fact, we won't take customers on unless we've got certain tools and processes in place. And you may have heard of this term, but patch management is a very big thing. So you've got the advantage of, you must have heard your husband speak about it. But a lot of people don't know what patch management is, because they think, well, I've got Microsoft and I've got Microsoft Cloud, or I've got G Cloud, I've got these various things, and they're doing everything they need to do for me, right? Well, wrong, because they may be storing your information in the cloud, but they're certainly not promising you that your information is secure. That's up to you as well. They're also not promising you that your information is backed up. That's also up to you. So people working with Microsoft 365 may think, well, I've got Office 365, Microsoft 365. I can go anywhere in the world and I can plug my PC in and I've got access to my tools. You're quite correct. But there in itself lies a challenge, because all your data is actually sitting in the cloud. That's not being guaranteed that it's being backed up. So backups are very, very key. And we've had many customers who have come to us and taken away the backup humdrum that they faced with every day and give that away to a specialist so they can focus on what I would call the production environment, what they really have to worry about to make sure the employees are working and so on. So you've got the generalists, they can do all the good stuff, but they may not be backup specialists, they may not be cybersecurity specialists, and it's always wise that they look outside the organization sometimes for a bit of help and a bit of assistance for that. And we've got, as I said, we've got very real examples of that being very worthwhile to do. So the cost sometimes it looks onerous, but I always say to customers, if you didn't spend that little bit of money, and it's not expensive, but if you didn't spend that, what really will occur to your brand if something happens? And your name gets splashed all over the country because you were exposed and your customers' data got exposed.
Yeah, I think it is, particularly in the world we live in, and the sort of, dare I use the term, digital revolution that's really been speeded up through COVID and the way the whole world is going. I think really starting to understand your online risks is so critical for everybody. So I think it's really helpful for me to be able to ask the real novice questions for my benefit as well, actually. So I really, really appreciate that. I think what might be quite a nice thing to sort of finish on, sort of case studies that you might be able to give us a real life example that you've seen.
So yes, I say no customer names, please, because some of them are fairly sensitive. But you'll have the situation again that arose with one of our customers that was very pertinent. Ransomware was just coming out and people being aware of it. And your typical scenario arose, well, have you got your antivirus installed? Yes, you have. Is it a reputable antivirus? And it's not something you've just downloaded for free. Because trust me, the free versions may look like they work, and then there's a whole lot of risks that they don't cover. So it's always worthwhile spending a little bit of money on that. And then the key thing about it is, has it been implemented correctly? So once again, unless you're a specialist in that space of endpoint security, as we call it, and you have followed the tried and trusted means of implementing, you're still going to be exposed to risk. So it's no good saying, well, I've got 600 PCs in my environment, home and at the office, and yes, I've deployed my antivirus, but you actually find that you've only deployed it to 500 of the 600. So it means that the 100 that you haven't deployed it to are at risk. And the minute there's a weak link, someone's going to come into that weak link and then penetrate your network. And that's exactly what happened to one of our clients. So we had sold them the antivirus and we had offered them a managed service. And they said that we fine, thank you, we'll deploy it ourselves. And we said, okay, great. And we moved on. And they got hit by ransomware. Fortunately for them, they had followed the key situation of having their data backed up, but not only having it data backed up on site, it was backed up off site at our data center, and then it was backed up to tape as well. So, and we keep 30 years of their information because they're a financial services house, and obviously their information is critical to be able to be recovered at any particular stage. And that was the key thing. Their data was recoverable because we test it on a regular basis. So the key around having your data backed up is, can it be restored? Is it restorable? And is it being tested at all times? So this customer was hit with ransomware. They hadn't followed our recommendations or the standard that they should have done. We managed to do some remediation on their attack vectors and get that sorted out. And then we were able to back up their data, and all they had lost was a couple of days of transactions, and they were up and running again. But they got hit twice because they didn't follow our antivirus deployment recommendations again, and they got hit again. But I think they lived in the security of the fact that, well, our data's backed up and Infoprotect's got it, so we should be okay. They were, but we said to them the second time, please don't do this again. Make sure that your security is right. And that's just one small story that I can tell you about that particular realm of attack and having your data backed up and secure.
I think that's really, really interesting. And also it's helpful when you are talking to people about their cyber risks to be able to offer stories and real life examples, and because it just makes something come alive a bit more, doesn't it? So
absolutely.
So no, I really, really appreciate your time, Brad. I think that is incredibly interesting. And if you don't mind, what I might do is put your details in the show notes, because if there are any brokers maybe that want to talk to you about, I don't know whether this even happens in your world, but a partnership or, you know, that kind of thing for any of their clients to be able to have an assessment or something like that, then I think that would be really, really useful. So if you're happy, I will do that.
Only a pleasure. We've got people around the country in the UK as well that we can obviously share information with and let them also deal with your customers and clients as necessary.
Fabulous. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Only a pleasure, Sarah. Great talking to you.